justice is an extraordinarily important thing in our society. And the key to justice is having a place where the work of justice can be done with both sides on equal footing. And that place is a courtroom with a judge and a jury. And a jury. There's a reason the founders gave us jury trials. Trial lawyers have been pursuing justice since the start of this country. I had been a trial lawyer for 20 years when I first found out about the antidepressant violence issue. I think that a company that sells mind-altering drugs to the public, particularly in the volume that this entire class of drugs sells, has an obligation to thoroughly investigate any instance where their drug may be the cause of violence or suicide or death. The first Prozac violence case to go to trial in America arose out of Joseph Westbecker's slaughter in Kentucky in August of 1989. It turned out he was on Prozac. The lawyers for the families of the people that were shot, injured, or killed said, wait, you know, this Prozac had something to do with it. And that suit was brought. It kind of became the lead case, the bellwether case. When the case went to trial, there was a secret deal between the plaintiff's lawyer, who also represented many plaintiffs across the country, and Eli Lilly. They withheld evidence from the jury and allowed Eli Lilly to trumpet the verdict as a, quote, vindication of Prozac. And when my friend found out about it, he was outraged. And he brought his outrage to me, and I was outraged. And he said, somebody needs to do something about that. I think it should be you, and I got hooked. It became clear that Prozac and later the other SSRI drugs were associated with this very bizarre, violent behavior towards self or others. And I learned about it. The very first case I had was a suicide case in Texas. I get my first case, and I began a process called discovery. And as the name suggests, you discover things. Through the discovery process in the civil justice system, lawyers representing families who are harmed by dangerous products can have access to information, documents, and witnesses that other people just can't, even the government. You can have access to studies that were never published, to internal emails, to internal memoranda that might acknowledge, whoa, there's a problem here that we need to actually look at that are never released otherwise. And so through this process called discovery, you can ferret around and find out the truth. And ultimately one day, you get to put that truth out in the sunshine in an open trial. You know, my reaction to the evidence that was unearthed in the discovery process was real simple. I'm a trial lawyer, so I wanted to take this evidence into a courtroom before a judge and jury as soon as possible. And as a practical matter, the only plaintiff's lawyers representing families who were victims of SSRI-induced violence toward self or others were me and the Baum Hedlund firm in Los Angeles. That's it. One of the things that we all had in common was disgust over the injustice in individual cases of these tragedies happening and no redress for them. When someone takes a medication under a doctor's advice, they don't expect to become intoxicated to the point that they're out of their minds. These drugs trigger violent behavior, frequently toward oneself, but also towards others. By this time in the mid-90s, we had active litigation going with 3 different companies. I mean, we weren't taking on one monster with one head and tentacles. We were taking on 3. The makers of Prozac, Paxil, and Zoloft, the 3-headed Gorgon, all of whom were fighting very fiercely against us. Right near the end of the 1990s, I took on yet another case in Cheyenne, Wyoming, that would become very precedent-setting, would change the world, really, with regard to this issue. And the case involved a man named Donald Schell. He got the drug Paxil. was on it for 2 days, and was not a violent man, never in his life. And 2 days on that drug, he killed his wife, his daughter, his 8-month-old granddaughter, and then himself. It was a massacre. I represented both sides of the family. I represented Tim Tobin, who was Mr. Schell's son-in-law. Tim had lost his own wife and his daughter, Alyssa. And then I represented the sister of Mrs. Schell and the son of the Shells. I represented the entire remaining family. They were very convinced that this man that did this was not the Donald Schell they had known their whole life, and that something else prompted him to do it. My career would be completely different after that trial, one way or the other. And so, literally speaking, professionally, financially, and otherwise, I had everything on the line. Let's put it this way. These companies in gross revenues are making $5 or $6 million a day, 365 days a year. When you are threatening them over a pill, which brings them $2 or $3 billion in revenues each year, the way I have likened it in the past is like walking into the cave and saying, well, Mama Grizzly Bear, I'm just gonna take this one cub from you. They react just like Mama Grizzly. When you do this, you have to psych yourself up. You know, you have to say, oh, well, gee, I'm ready for this fight. And so in your own mind, you say, I'm like St. George, I'm out to slay the dragon. You know, I'm on my white charger and I've got my lance and whatever. From the other side of the courtroom, I think you probably appear more like a little shepherd boy with a slingshot. As a lawyer in Houston, Texas, the tiny little law firm, their wealth and power is infinite. I'll tell you exactly what it takes to take on a big company like that in court. One thing really, realization. There's a famous speech given by Atticus Finch in To Kill a Mockingbird, and it's about how the only place in America where there's a completely level playing field is a courtroom. And so what it takes to be a trial lawyer taking on one of these Goliaths is to realize that Atticus was right, that there's one place in America where you're their equal. And if you can get them into that place with a fair judge on the bench and fair citizens in the jury box, it's a fair fight. So at the conclusion of the trial, after hearing all the evidence, very scientific evidence, the first question the jury was asked was one that I devised on purpose to answer this question, not just for this case, but really once and for all. The jury was asked, can Paxil cause some people to commit homicide and or suicide? Not Donald Schell. Can it cause some people to do this? All or nothing verdict. The jury said, yes, it can. Second question was, well, how about this case? Did Paxil cause Mr. Schell to take the life of his wife, daughter, granddaughter, and his own? And the jury said, yes, it did.
A Wyoming jury has decided the antidepressant drug Paxil is responsible for a murder-suicide shooting spree that left 4 people dead. In 1998, 60-year-old Donald Schell had just started taking Paxil when he killed his wife, his daughter, and granddaughter, and then turned the gun on himself. Yesterday, in a wrongful death suit, the jury awarded Schell's family $6.4 million.
The jury's verdict in the Schell case was precedent-setting. Precedent-setting. A, because of the information put in the public domain as part of that trial, and B, because of the verdict of the jury and the judgment of the court, it could not be ignored. That opened the door for myself and other lawyers, advocacy groups, scientists, to come forward with evidence that had been unearthed and to bring it to the attention of the regulatory authorities, and they could no longer bury their heads in the sand. And finally, in 2004, lo and behold, we got there, and the FDA required black box warnings. Bringing a change about in American society is something that I'm very pleased to have been a part of. I'm a trial lawyer. I work in a courtroom. and the light of sunshine shines in our courtrooms. And I believe in the justice of the people I choose to represent, because the truth of their stories could not be ignored. And I'm proud of what we did. That's a good feeling. When I go to the courthouse, I put on my white Stetson hat. And for me, at least, it's a reminder and it's a talisman that we're on the right side and we're doing the right thing for the right reasons. We're the guys in the white hats in this fight, okay?